October is National Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And with us today to talk about not only how domestic violence affects those being abused, but also those around them, we have Jessica Schindeldecker from the Fargo Police Department. Thank you for joining us today.
Good to be back.
A tough one to talk about. We don't like to think that it is happening, but it is an issue. And I want to start just with how you would define, or how Fargo Police would define, domestic violence.
Well, we define it as the state defines it, so if somebody who lives together, has a common child together, who is in a relationship together, if something were to happen between them, like bodily injury, at that point we shall arrest when that occurs. If there's no visible injury but there's a claim of it, we'll do a report and send that through to the state's attorney's office and let them decide whether or not charges are appropriate.
It seems like certain times of the year, and we listen to scanners in newsrooms, you hear more calls certain times out of the year. Let's start though with why you have a domestic, not you specifically, but why we all have a domestic violence awareness month.
Well, it's just important to make sure that we're recognizing those victims of domestic violence. And domestic violence can be in many different ways, and it's not just always physical. Sometimes it's emotional and financial. And domestic violence it causes issues with even our children that are involved in those households. And we want to make sure our campaign's always been that it's everyone's business, right? So if you live in an apartment complex or you're a neighbor and you see something going on, or you see some sort of behavior that could be cause for concern, you need to call us. Don't worry about it not being your business or being too nosy. We'd rather go check it out and make sure that everybody involved is safe rather than not go check it out.
That's a very good point, because I feel like that's been a stigma or something we've had to fight to change, that it was just someone else's private business and you didn't step in.
Absolutely. So if you live in an apartment complex or you live next to somebody, you hear a lot of shouting or you hear maybe some physical violence, call us so we can check it out. We're not going to throw you under the bus and tell you who called, but it's important for us to be able to go there and check on people and offer resources to them to find out how we can help their lives be better.
And you brought up children. I mean, children often, if they don't see it firsthand, they hear it firsthand. We want to protect our children.
Yeah, a lot of times this domestic violence is a learned behavior. So our children from even, ages of, young as 2 or so, they're learning this behavior from what they're seeing in their household, and they're learning that maybe this might be an appropriate way to act because they're seeing mom or dad do it. So it's really important to remember that it's not just mom or dad who's being affected, it's also the children, and so we need to protect everybody involved.
And I know, at least in the West Fargo School District, that they are addressing this and talking to kids in school too. Is this new to bring this into the classroom?
I'm not sure if it's new to bring it into the classroom. I know that they do talk about it even in elementary school, and they have been for many years, about what's right and what's wrong, and what, if you see something like this, you can talk to a counselor, bring it up to the school resource officer so we can get you help.
We think about hearing next door in an apartment building, but sometimes it could be the teacher. Mm-hmm. It could be another student. It could be someone as young as a first, second grader who knows, their friend, something is going on, something's not right. Absolutely.
So it's just bringing it up to somebody who you can trust and talk to, so that way we can get it reported to the appropriate authorities.
And I brought this up right away too. I feel like it's kind of up and down. It's always sadly there, but it does seem like certain times of the year, especially as we're moving into the holiday season, that we see maybe more calls for help.
Yeah, I was reviewing some of the data from the last 5 years, and you would think that it almost seems like every, there's certain months where it peaks, and it does kind of start to peak, especially when families are together. I saw February peaked out for some reason. I don't know why, without looking at all the reports or into the data, but it does seem to be a kind of a constant where we're seeing it. It's a daily occurrence. Officers are dispatched to domestic calls every single day, and they're dangerous calls to go to because emotions are elevated. But what's really important is making sure that people are calling this in, reporting it, so we can go and try to protect these victims as best as we can.
And expanding on that, you don't know what you're getting into. It doesn't, it expands from just a fight between a man and a woman or two family members to sometimes turning on the person who is responding.
Absolutely, and you just don't know, so that's why it's important for our officers. They tactically respond to it, but they want to make sure that they get there in a timely manner so they can protect everybody involved.
What kind of resources do you guys have, or what would you suggest for people who may be watching right now and they are maybe in a situation that they don't know where to turn for help?
Sure. So we provide them information on scene about Rape and Abuse Crisis Center, what's available. Oftentimes, if there is visible injury or we can figure out who the predominant aggressor is, we are able to make that arrest at that time, and then the court will put that protection order in place. But it's also important for those victims to abide by those protection orders as well, and not within a week or so go back to that person, and then there's that violation in place. So Rape and Abuse Crisis Center and the YWCA is a place that we will provide resources for.
Yeah, it's not as easy as right and wrong. It's so emotional and sometimes hard for victims to.
Yeah, it's a very complex issue. A very, these are their loved ones, and everybody hopes that it will change and something, they can go forward with that. But we're here to provide them resources and to help.
Important time to have this conversation and remember that it's everybody's business.
Absolutely.
I like that line as well. Thank you, Jessica, for coming in. Stay with us. Coming up next, Fresh Grounded Faith is a 2-day event that hopes to connect and encourage women with each other through Bible study and friendship. We're going to talk all